To everybody who is joining us from Italy. We're very happy to have Professor Renata Salvarani this week with us on an Erasmus visit. She's professor in the history of Christianity and also directs the Center for the Study of Heritage and Territory at the European University of Rome. Professor Salvarani's research work concentrates in the history of religious and cultural relations between Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Primarily as a scholar of medieval history, the focal areas of her work are the monotheistic traditions in the Euro-Mediterranean area, religion, and the related use and experience of space, institutions and space, as well as the history of Jerusalem with a particular focus on the history and special experience of the Holy Sepulchre. Her projects focus on identity and heritage with specific reference to the historical origins of the various cultural and ethnic groups living in the contemporary European and Mediterranean cities. She's a prolific author with more than 140 scientific publications and the recipient of a number of grants, projects, and fellowships. Among her works, I will highlight the 2019 book with the title The Body, the Liturgy, and the City, which discusses the cultural experiences of shared multi-layered urban spaces, as well her 2018 book on the history and archaeology of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. I want to also highlight that Professor Salvarani is not resting in the confines of academic historical research, but is also particularly active in sharing her knowledge with the broader public through journalism and popular history work and activities. It's not an easy task, and I really appreciate her efforts, especially around the topic of religious cultural history, which carries enormous societal significance and contemporary meaning. It's not difficult for you to understand and the relevance and the close relation of Professor Salvarani's work with aspects of our work here at StarC. The study of historical layered Mediterranean cities like Nicosia, Famagusta, Alexandria, and many more, and the interdisciplinary study of the use and experience of spaces of cult and pilgrimage across time, like the example of Lampadisti's monastery, just to name one example, are very relevant and familiar themes to us. So we plan to develop a closer collaboration with her and her group, and her visit to the Cyprus Institute is only the beginning. She will present to us a talk with the title, Share the Multi-Layered Cities Around the Mediterranean, an Integrated Methodology for Historical Research. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Nicholas Baktiris. Thank you to the director of the Cyprus Institute, Sorin Hermona, to Thanasis Koutupas for this invitation, for being here for this afternoon. We will speak about a common topic, topic very shared and very known by your equipe. In a general overview, is the topic of the symbolic cities, about the shared city, and the perspective is that of the social cohesion and of the valorization in contemporary societies. Well, we start from the concept. If we consider a city as a symbolical system, a system created and transformed in relationship with identities, rights, and forms of the society, thus the urban space appears as a living palimpsest, receiving signs impressed by human communities. And the title of your very complex and beautiful and interesting project was indeed Mediterranean palimpsest. This is the basic idea, and in my previous studies and in the approach we are following in the Research Center for Heritage and Territory in the European University of Rome, the focus is the human body, and the focus is on the right. The space is not only material. is not an ensemble of stones, of perceptions, of buildings, but the space is created by the body acting in a place, and the body acting across the rights, and creating symbols, creating and basing social aspects, basing societies, ordered societies, hierarchies, relationships of power, and is the right that create the space. This is a point of view, a point of view to interpret the cities, and mostly the complex global cities, as multi-layered cities. This approach comes from far, and comes from the imposition of Henri Lefebvre, the idea that a city is a creation not only functional, but mostly an ensemble of symbols. And the city can be, in this vision, can be considered as a symbolic system, an integrated, living, moving, and changing system of symbols. This is mostly evident in the so-called shared cities. In other words, all the cities are shared by different groups. Identity groups, religious groups. Why we consider religious groups and religious identities? Simply because this kind of elements, this kind of features are more evident than others. And in a historical approach, we have more means, more chances to outline the differences, to outline the belongings and the identities. And we have many sources, many different kind of sources, so we start from this approach. Along the centuries, religious identities collected all the other social aspects. Political, we know very well, clashes between groups, economical interests, and so on. But the religious approach can be only also the first, the most evident, the easiest. In other words. And this is useful for us. It's a key opening almost every doors, mostly in the Mediterranean area, where we can match, we can intersect three main Greek religious traditions across a very, very long time. So we have a framework, a structured framework, integrated, that allow us to interpret a long-time phenomena till today, till the contemporary societies, and we can also address all research or historical research to valorization and to contemporary societies. The shared cities can considered as multi-layered systems, result of dynamic processes of semantization and resemantization of places, of architectures, natural elements. This image is about the most amazing stratigraphy in the Mediterranean and Near East area. This is the stratigraphy of Megiddo in Israel, where we can see 11 layers of different cities destroyed and rebuilt. So when we think to a multi-layered city, we can imagine Megiddo, but Megiddo is a died city now. It's a wonderful archaeological area, very visited, very well valorized, but it is finished. That is, there are settlements all around, connected also with the excavations and with the valorization of the site, but this is finished. In our perspective, we consider the concept and the word multi-layered city in a more general sense, including the living cities, the contemporary cities. And we consider a multi-layered city, a city including multiple identities living in shared or divided spaces, but present in the same time in the same place. So we mean more and more large ensemble of different urban contexts. The approach is a historical one, and from a historical perspective, the documental reconstruction of liturgies, processions, and devotional gestures is a key to interpret the relation itself between groups and built environment. How can we understand how a city has been built, how the space has been created, configured, or modified? A key to interpret this phenomena, this changing, this continuous changing, can be the liturgy, the celebrations, the rites. How different dots in the space can be connected with a sense, with a memory. But it is not a theoretical memory, but a living memory, a performed one. And the way, the mean to understand, to make live a meaning is the liturgy, is the gesture organized and codified. And from an historical perspective, we must use some different kind of sources, written sources and material sources concerning the liturgies. The history of liturgies is one, you know very well, one of most complex study, because we have to consider liturgical sources in a stricto sensu, but also chronicles, documents, images of the rites, images of the processions, memories, oral witnesses. We have to integrate different points of view and different kinds of sources to understand exactly what happened, because a liturgy can change. And every time performance is including many elements of true lives of people. Every participant brings in the liturgy itself, his real life, his condition, his human condition, his gender, his social belongings, and so on. But after a bit of theory, 3 case studies in particular can highlight such dynamics. The first one is a case study we can testify, we can document in the city of Rome in a specific period, the transition, the long transition also in Rome, between the pagan context and early Christianity, the passage from polytheism, Roman polytheism, to the Christianism, between the so-called late antiquity and early Middle Ages. This is a process, a longer process, that deals the same forma urbis, the same structure of the city. Even if in Rome, as in other cities in the Mediterranean, we don't record many distractions or changing urbanistical changes. But we can read, we can testify, we can highlight some different refunctionalization processes. The changes of use of the spaces or the abandon of some areas, some buildings. But at the end of this process, we deal with a totally different city. Not so different in the stones, but totally different in the perceptions, in the narratives, in what people lived, and in what people narrated to others outside the city or to further generations. This transformation, this case, impacted on the same forum area, the symbolic imperial heart of the city. what now we see as a great archaeological city area was, during the imperial time, the heart of public celebrations, not only religious, but also political and civilian. So it was a heart very lived, very participated. And during these passages from paganism to Christianism, the Forum has never been abandoned. It has used in a different way. And probably for some period it has been used by different groups in different ways. And we have to consider in this case a very large area, larger than the archaeological complex of today. Well, to understand better what happened and how this urban symbolism has radically, totally changed in these passages, we have to consider the cult for one of the main martyrs, Roman martyrs, who is St. Lawrence. St. Lawrence was a diacon, and he's a very attractive figure for the conversions to the new religion, to new groups. But now we can connect the cult for St. Lawrence to the great basilica, San Lorenzo fuori le mura, that is outside of the wall, outside of the most important places in the city, very far from the symbolical pagan heart and the places of the Senatus Romanus, a place distant and separated from the aristocratic places into the city. But if we consider different points, different dots in the city, we can register till now that the toponym San Lorenzo is present in different positions across the city into the walls. How? There was a small cave, a small building, a grotta, a source, a fountain, entitled to St. Lawrence. And according with these dotted evidences on a toponomastical level, we can match written sources, and we can highlight how a memory, a devotional memory of the life and of the passion and death of St. Lawrence has been displaced all around the city, crossing also the area of the Fori. Now, here we are seeing the first, pardon, no? Pardon. These two first pictures are of the Hill Quirinale, what is the palace of the President of the Republic. And the name is San Lorenzo in Fonte. There is a fountain entitled to Lawrence. This point is in the Basilica of San Lorenzo in Lucina, in the contemporary city center, not far from the other. And here there is a title to St. Lawrence. And this is the area of the Forum. Here, on the left, we see these columns. This is the nowadays Church of San Lorenzo in Miranda. What was this building? It was simply a temple, a pagan temple, reused in memory of St. Lawrence and the place of the prison of St. Lawrence before his martyrium. This is the Palatine Hill, the Rampa di Domiziano. Here inside are the most important, the most relevant churches, depicted churches in the area of the Forum. Witnesses that this area has been Christianized. Step by step, with small buildings, small transformations, and only at the end, the popes connected all the itinerary. Why? And to celebrate the memory of the saint, the memory of the martyr, and to create the new Christian city. And what has been the element connected so many dots? The liturgies and the processional liturgies. The main feature of Roman, in the sense of the city of Rome, of the Roman liturgy, the papal liturgy, is a stationary character. It was a procession stopping where? In the main places, in the most important symbolical places. In this case, we are an itinerary connected to Lawrence, starting from the inside the city, from the forum, and going outside at the end of the process. At the starting of the process, the direction was inverted. It was from outside the place of the martyrium, the place where the body is conserved, to the forum. At the end of the process, the papal liturgies is from inside to outside. Well, the second case is in Jerusalem. It's evident that Jerusalem is, for excellence, multi-layered city and a shared city by different groups. In the urban landscapes, there are some landmarks outlining this nature of Jerusalem. This is not historical nature of Jerusalem. The temple at first, the Jewish identity of Jerusalem, and the other landmarks so evident. Sharing the space, a space participated, lived, crossed. If you think to the pilgrims of all the three religions, we have a living image of this city. But here today we consider a micro case into the multi-layered city that is located in the complex of the Holy Sepulchre, and it is a case dating back to the 15th century at least, but lasting till today, with relevant diplomatic implications, and is the controversy between Ethiopians and Copts for the monastery of Deir es-Sultan, that is located where the Latin canons built their cluster when the Basilica, Constantinian Basilica of the Holy Sepulchre, has been deeply transformed in the Latin period. Well, if we watch at this map, we can see that that the Holy Sepulchre is not a building, is a quarter, is a surrounding of the city, and the area is very, very large and was very large in the Constantinian era, but also during the Latin kingdom of Jerusalem. In this period, all the space between the Cardo, the axis north-south of the city, and the Anastasis was occupied by the cluster of the regular canons of the Holy Sepulchre. And it was something like a monastery, even if the canons are not exactly monks. Well, this area, now, this is the entrance, we can see the entrance, where is the statue of the Via Crucis, is still settled as a monastery by the Ethiopians. The Ethiopians have occupied this area, and you see here in these pictures the privatization of the spaces, the creations of something as cells, used as cells, used to stay, to pray together, and to share some liturgies and some processions, not only in this part of the complex, but also at the level of the the southern entrance, the small square today behind the main entrance. Well, here we have a case. You see here the planimetry. The part occupied by the Ethiopian monks is on the right. Here, this case demonstrates how different groups set the space in controversy with other groups, because the revendication is both by the Coptic and by the Ethiopians. Who is the winner? There is no winner, but there are different periods. Ethiopians prevail when their homeland is more powerful because of diplomatic alliances. And we know that Ethiopia contemporarily is connected with the USA and with the State of Israel. The Coptic are connected with the Egypt. So the trial, there is a trial, a juridical controversy has different phases. The Coptic could go back in this area, but in the reality this doesn't happen because of different form of balancing of presences of different groups in the same area and in a mutual status quo, accepted by both, with some points, some moments of clashes, of controversies, and of difficulties to living together. This is an example of living together, living apart, connecting the two groups. The two groups deal and stay together, celebrating some liturgies, but in different times. Around the Anastasis, around the empty tomb of Jesus, but they occupy day and night this place to mark their presence and their control in this sacred place. Well, the third case study is very well studied here, very well known by you all. In this case, we have to consider a question, a great question. Has been in a particular period, the second half of the 15th century, Nicosia can be considered a shared city and a multi-layered city? This is the question. Official historiography in Italy considered this period only a Venetian rule and considered Nicosia as a part of the Republic of Venice and in a Latin context. So if we consider only the sources present in Venice, we have only some few elements, some suggestions about the presence of other groups. We don't have evidence of Muslim, for example, in this period in Nicosia. Is this possible? Very difficult. There are the evidence of different Christian groups, Armenians, Coptics, Copts, and or Greek Orthodox, of course, Gregorian. There are some testifies of these different Christian presences. But, for example, we don't have evidence of Muslim. We know that there were merchants from different cities of the Mediterranean, from Genoa, from the Balearic Islands, and so on. But there is a partial view, a partial narrative. So we have to consider some other written sources, the chronicles and the text of pilgrimage and the cartularies. A lot of this, I think almost the totality of this kind of sources has been edited and published here in Cyprus. So this is a very, very lucky case. And we can go in deep to deal with our general topics. About the text of pilgrimage of this period, we have a lot of voyagers coming from Northern Europe, from Great Britain, from the Flanders, from Northern France. They were on the way to Jerusalem. But the characteristic of their trip is a long staying in Cyprus. More than 1 month, sometimes, more months. They stayed, they walked around, they go in the sanctuaries, in Greek Orthodox churches, they go to the tombs, in the monasteries also. There is a very crossed and mixed presence of pilgrims. In the text of pilgrimage, there are a lot of informations about Nicosia also, and about the presence of different groups, differentiated not only for language and religious beliefs and so on, but for functions, for activities. And all pilgrims refers to them asking something for their material basic needs. So we discovered that there were Muslims into the city and out of the city, that the ports were settled and inhabited by different communities, including also Muslim, and not only the different kinds of Christians, and there are very, very mixed, a lot of mixed situations. But this is a topic still open, because the questions are, how did they interact? What was their daily life? The life in the space, the life around the ports, the line into the walls of Nicosia. How can we consider Nicosia a shared and multi-layered city concretely? On the methodological level, some relevant answers come from the achievements of the project Mediterranean Palimpsest of Cyprus Institute. But I think that thanks to your technologies, your high technological level, we could achieve more results around this topic, where they lived, what has been the structure of the houses, of the daily places of life, not only of the churches, on mosque, on a place of cult, but the normal life, and how was divided the city of Nicosia. Have we considered only the walled city, as the Venetian documents do, or we can consider all the suburbs? It was so closed, really so closed city, and this specific period of the passage to the Serenissima Republic. I think that some questions are still open. But in general, these cases, these 3 only cases, but the colleagues have a lot of other casuistics. These cases outline some common features that we can include in a more structured interpretative framework that we can use, we can apply to other different situations all around the Mediterranean, not only in the medieval period, but till today. First of all, we are in a urban civilization context. We speak about settlement, a durable, a long time and long-term settlement. We speak of sedentary civilization. We could also consider nomadic presences and the travelers, yes, but the context, the mentality, the mental idea of the space is a sedentary one. The migratory element is present, is relevant, but in the documentation we deal with individual or small groups. We have pilgrims, militaries, priests, groups of monks, merchants, sometimes the families of the merchants, but are migrations of small groups of persons gathering in networks. networks, dotting, and settling in different cities, in different areas. We deal with monotheistic cultures, so we can see and we can use methodologically the concept of exclusion. What is not true, what is not accepted, what is other, totally other. So we can introduce some divisions and some discrimina. We outline public rites and liturgies. Also in the first case, that of the processions for St. Lawrence, we deal with public rites and public processions. We can consider private cults only for the 3rd century, but starting from the 4th century in Rome, we can speak about public liturgies and openly Christian public liturgies. We deal with identity clashes, not necessarily violent clashes, but contrasts are very evident in all the cases. We deal with memory processes with identity implication. Memory is the basis for the identity, and it is 3 traditions. The elaboration of stories and history, the sense of a history, of a community history, and the necessity to preserve this memory and to narrate publicly this memory. And we have a very evident distinction between sacred and profane spaces, because we deal with monotheistic religious traditions. About the first step of the Roman polytheism, we can have some mixed places. But with the Christianism, we have the distinction between sacred and profane. And another evident element are the marks in the space. Well, these elements, these interpretative lines, can converge in a methodological framework that we can use to identify this kind of processes in the context of the Mediterranean cities till today, till the contemporary global societies. In this methodology, the ICT have a central role, not only to connect, to collect and to interpret informations, but also to provide data about the space, about the shapes of the space and the transformation of the space. And the match between written sources, narratives, and informations coming from the ICT applied to the space can provide more detailed analysis, informations, and interpretative elements. And, well, you are getting the end, because I'm very interested in your questions and observations and novelties. The project idea of this further project, the project we have called RAUM, or Institute, is the idea to apply this methodological framework to different cities in the Mediterranean, starting from the Abrahamic religions distinctions and starting from the individuation of the groups connected with these traditions. The idea is that each of these 3 traditions elaborated a different conception of the space. The space of the Jewish is not the space of the Christians and of Muslims. There are different ways to conceive and to perceive the space, different ways to settle, to separe, to distinguish, and to use the space of the city. Starting from this hypothesis, this idea, we can check in different cities what happened around the Mediterranean, where and everywhere it happens, where these 3 main large groups lived together, but separated. How they separated, how they stay together, how they pray separately, but live together. Well, RAUM is evidently the acronym of Religions, Architecture in the Urban Mediterranean. This is the idea. And the project idea included, of course, researchers on historical level, urbanistical level, the reconstruction with the ICT of the spaces of the city, but also the interpretations of the data and the interpretations of the space. How Christian pilgrim can speak and write about Nicosia, and how a Muslim pilgrim watched at Nicosia in the same period, at the same stones, the same buildings, but different eyes and different narratives, and different ideas of the space. And mostly in Jerusalem, this is evident. Each one goes to see, to find what he desired, and what he has in his mind. The mentality, the idea of the space is stronger than the reality. So the aim is to define the different interpretations and also the changing of interpretations. In the sources, in the spaces, in the archaeological area, but also in the living spaces, so also today, and how these living spaces also today maintain different identities. How? What are the choices and the directions to conserve, to preserve different identities, or the volunteers to cancel the identities? What are the dynamics of the identities processes and of the changing, transforming, enlarging, opening identities, or closing identities to conserve, to preserve? And the final aim is that of the social cohesion. So we get the general topic of the European Union and of social cohesion in general. Well, this project idea that I wish would be shared also by the Cyprus Institute and your institute in particular, include all these elements in the European framework of the research. That's all by me. I wait for your observations.
That you presented, Renata, that are familiar to us, and definitely topics where we can identify variety. Should we use this for the audience? For the audience. So definitely we can relate to a lot of the issues that you presented, and of course the project that you spoke on about is very relevant. So any comments? I mean, I have a million, but I wanted to ask you related. So can you talk a little bit of how you're thinking? I think for me, the examples of cities like Rome and Jerusalem are very easy to understand how they fit in this methodological model, long continuity, the three groups you identified clearly with a strong presence. How would one proceed with a certain set of criteria? Like I was trying, Nicosia is familiar to us, but I'm just asking you if you could talk to us a little bit of how would one begin to treat these palimpsest cities along this methodological approach?
Yes, thank you for the question. I didn't want to go in very technical aspects, but this is very, very relevant. Well, this list of common interpretative lines is a starting point to define the criteria, to individuate the cities and the cases into the city. These are the elements to be relevated, and when you individuate some elements of this kind, public rights and liturgies, migrations, you try to understand to the main questions. The main question is who are the groups, how the groups interact among them, and how the narrative changes and how the city changes. When you relive and we determine these aspects, we try to understand in the same time to these general questions. That's true. If we consider Rome, Jerusalem, Nicosia, Barcelona, it is very easy, or Cairo or Alexandria. But if we consider some smaller cities, on considered uniform cities, it is more difficult. But these elements, these interpretative lines, are every time present, at least during the Middle Ages and the first modern era. There are periods of migrations across the Mediterranean. And then, as an example, in Pisa. Pisa is a small Italian city. In Pisa, we have the Jewish community, different groups of Christians and Muslim also, who are not present only in Livorno, in the port of Livorno, but they are present also in this small city. It is evidently a small minority, but they are. Where they are placed in the city, how this small group interact with others. Or in some other cases, we don't have people of every group, but we have books, codes, epigraphs. We have traces of passages or traces of a circulation of motif and of texts. The libraries, monastical libraries, include all these kind of communities, even if not the person, not the people. How this kind of elements circulated and how then contribute to define the space.
Thank you. Nicolette?
Thank you so much for this presentation. I wanted to ask a little bit about methodology. Do you find that you have distinct approaches to looking at more historical palimpsests versus modern and contemporary examples? And I just wonder if you could speak a little bit more on the kind of different strategies that you might have when you're looking at only historical material versus contextualizing things for modern and even current populations in cities.
Well, thank you for the question. The historical approach is the basic one, but necessarily we have to consider contemporary cities and living cities, and so other methodologies, such as methodologies coming from sociology, and then the performative arts also can be used to determine or to fix and to conserve also the memory of these present cities, these living present cities, looking forward to the future. So we will try to integrate different approach, not only the historical one. But the historical one is the basic. We don't understand what is happening now if we don't consider what has been the Mediterranean context before, and where come from these matrices of the three monotheism, these mental structures, where come from? and how they interact across the centuries in this area. This is the general idea.
Following up on that, I just want to add that, I mean, we live now here in Nicosia. We live in a city that is divided. The division is still very present and tense. And I would even comment that I would say that for this reason, as you all know, it's very conducive as an historic space to study the past, because always when we go around with students, various groups have been visiting us in Nicosia, and it's a very easy city to teach and to help people understand the meaning of the past, because you need that knowledge to understand the present. Unless you begin to dissect and understand the bits and pieces of heritage, of identity, of all these important, let's say, cultural fragments that make up present-day divided Nicosia. That's why I've always found it amazing when I was visiting with students, both Athens, let's say, and Nicosia. Many students were preferring Nicosia to study the past, and I was always amazed about that, because they were saying, well, the present is so tense and so vibrant that I need to look more at the history. The other is a museum. So it's okay, I visit a city that is a museum, but Nicosia, its present is difficult to understand, so I have to read more. And I think Jerusalem is one of these cities. Like, there is no way escaping its complex history. So
yes.
So I think that this is like something that we need to take into consideration as we're trying to put together or to frame a methodological perspective, a project, something like that, because we have to identify what is it about that dimension of the present that we as historians need to capture and then use it for our purposes. Because sometimes, as you said, other cities have been very much monumentalized. And I find it that sometimes very difficult because they have been narrated and laid out. Rome is one of these, I think. They're laid out as museum. That's why it was so useful for me to hear you speak yesterday about this particular part of Rome, which there is a very interesting present-day reality that invites historical research and understanding. The other is a museum.
Yes, the other are museums and are covered by the national narrative. In these cases, we have multinational narratives, also in Barcelona, and in Cairo yes, it is an open city till now, and more different narratives are opened. Some other cases, the patriotic national narrative try to undermode the other narratives.
Hi, thanks again. I wanted to ask regarding the methodology again. I guess these cities, like the majority of the, two of the three case studies that you mentioned are cities that continue being inhabited until today, except for Megiddo. I was wondering in what degree could you include archaeological research to this study? I guess new excavations are very difficult to do, and you cannot get rid of the modern buildings and go deep, but I'm wondering if there are any past excavations or any kind of archaeological data that could actually help with answering questions like that, integrate them into the questionnaire.
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, one of the criteria is to consider living cities, not dead cities in general. But in every case, archaeological elements can provide a lot of information about groups and about the settlement of the groups. In Rome also, the complex archaeology of Rome still lasting with new excavations. publications can provide more information about the different social groups, but also the foreigners presence in the city along the river, surely along the river. And in this sense, archaeology can be very well integrated in this framework. But in this perspective, to provide more information, material sources, to define where the groups settled and how they interact. And in the case of shown yesterday about the Casilino neighbor of Rome, the archaeological heritage is very imponent, is a way to involve contemporary different communities of immigrants in the same space and in a shared narrative or in a shared consciousness to live in the same place. Thank you. Well, a warm greeting to my students from the European University of Rome. I cannot intervene, but we will continue from next week again, and I can listen to you directly.
So, can I? Yeah, thank you. So I see these interpretative lines here, which I assume should help frame kind of history of a city or the essence of a city, and what does it mean, these cities. But actually, I think also it was mentioned the time dimension, which is crucial, and I was wondering how you integrate here the temporal dimension in the analysis itself. Also because if you think about the space of Jerusalem, for example, in Jerusalem, I think it is a very good example that the space that we call now Jerusalem is very, very different than Jerusalem in the past. But also today, if you ask some people what is Jerusalem, they will mention some neighborhoods, they will omit other neighborhoods because they have their own identity and their own names. And also in the past, the same space was a totally different city. So actually what you see in Jerusalem are different cities. So in a way, it's a bit difficult to have one interpretation and address Jerusalem as a city throughout its time. So I was wondering how you address the temporality.
Yes, of course, Sorin. Jerusalem is a macro case, very difficult to deal in its long and extraordinary continuity. So in the context of Jerusalem, we can choose some elements or this general question. What is a city, when the city has been founded, and how was the first Jerusalem, not only where, but how was this city, and how the multi-layering process happened there in Jerusalem, and what now we can see, we can perceive of this stratification. But this is a very, I think, the most complex in the world. In the other cases, and Rome is the second. Maybe Athens is the second and Rome the third. But in the other cities, this element is a bit reduced. About the general project idea, we can decide a periodization, a general periodization for the project, or a different timeline for each city, considering only some periods, the most relevant periods about the topic. So we can cut, or we can provide a general history, the same as for Nicosia. We can start from the Ledra culture, but we can consider and focus on different periods and shorter periods. This is a way to get an end of the project. Yes.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. My question is about the technical aspect of your work.
About, I haven't
The
had
technical aspect.
Technical aspects, yes.
You mentioned that the way that you use the technology not only help you not only in the collecting data. I would like to know more about how it helped you in your work, the way that you use the technology.
Thank you. Thank you for this question that allows me to introduce something about my university and its research centers. In this kind of projects, we use low-cost technologies. We have two main research centers oriented to this kind of topics. One is the Center for the Heritage and Territory, and the other is the GREAL, a geographical one. This last one has a group of drones that we use for the elevation of the landscape, of closed spaces, such as catacombs and difficult situations or urban inhabited situations. We are for Italy, we are the licenses to operate on the national territory, also in this kind of situations. And the Center for the Heritage and Territory is specialized in collecting data and database, the construction of databases for written sources, literary sources, and photographical databases. We also, in this case, with low-cost technologies and very simple tools, used also by students in their starting passages. These are the match of all technologies. Surely your level is higher on this side. Our specific orientation is to use low-cost technologies with the communities, the local urban communities, and to teach them to use it. We leave them the databases. The databases are open access, but the aim is to make local communities able to use it and to use the database, but also to create and to implement. For example, the Bank of Memory of the Ecomuseo of Casilino is based on a very, very simple methodology that is a database of podcast and video organized in a tree of topics in a very, very simple database, but useful for them, useful when they want to create a website for tourists, a website for the conservation of the places, or something useful for the local administrations also.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's thank Professor.
Thank you. Thank you to you.
Thank you.
Thank you to you.